I don't have any control. So Jimmy, you're running it.
All right. Good morning. I was going to say something about everyone being fired, and I was taking complete control of the show being April 1st. But April Fool's Day jokes are dangerous. They can get out of control. We did one really successful one. So I ran a radio station in Northeast Pennsylvania, and there was a band out of Northeast PA that had made it. And the band, maybe you guys have heard of them, Breaking Benjamin. They came from Northeast Pennsylvania, and we started playing like fake promos saying that as of 6 a.m. because of an issue with their record company, we were no longer going to be able to play their music. And being from that area, they were like the hometown guys. And the band was in on it, by the way. We had called the band a week before, and we had a petition on our website for people to sign to counter this. And of course, when you got there, it said you'd been got. But so many people were still calling the radio station by noon and being like outraged. And we're like, did you sign the petition? They're like, yes. And I'm like, you didn't sign the petition. There isn't a petition. It's an April Fool's Day joke and you never clicked it. That was a good one that, we got on the news for that one. And the other one was, I didn't do this one. My morning guy did. He said we were giving away pediatric tattooing kits. Oh. And that caused outrage. And the final one, before I start talking about April Fool's Day too much, somebody else did this. They said there were sound sensors installed in all the red lights in a very busy road in the Hudson Valley, that if you got to a red light and you honked 3 times real fast, it would hurry up and change it to green.
Wow.
So you have morons at the red light, honk, 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 and they're honk, honk, honking, and nothing is happening. So that's the situation.
All right.
I was just hoping that this was actually going to be me live here. Tony told me this morning, last minute, hey, do you want to be on? I thought he was just messing with me. So
no, for sure. So for context, people that are watching, Dave Kittle is out for the morning. Joey decided to join us. I said, come join us for the first 20 minutes. He's got some cool stuff going on. So Joey, I want to right out of the gate, I want to talk about Florida. Florida is, you have an event. It's in Orlando, April, did you say 24th?
Yep, April 24th through the 26th is when it is. So in Orlando, we've got quite a few people that are going to be there. So we've got us with Rehab CEOs, so marketing, consulting side of things. Then we have Empower EMR, so one of the EMR companies out there. We got Comprehend, which is a AI scribe. We have Will Humphreys. His is more, he does a lot of stuff. I mean, he does stuff all over. He's had billing company. He's done stuff for roll-ups. He's done stuff. I think his main thing he's focusing on now is placing VAs for front office. Because I don't know anybody who's like, I really love having more front office that are expensive. And we have a lot of administrative stuff. So Will's helping with that. And then we have the guys from PT Billing, because of course you got to get paid. So there's the billing side of things. So a pretty big group of people with a lot of really kind of big guy kind of energy there, because they pretty much everybody there is established with very like multi locations, and there's people ranging that are going to be there from 1 to, I think the most we have that's going to be there has 14 locations. So a big emphasis on kind of the bigger guys on this one.
Where are you guys going to be? Is it like a convention center? Is it a hotel? Where are you doing it?
You're asking me all kinds of stuff that I wasn't quite prered for and I don't have. So it is.
Where you're going?
Dude, no. I just show up. So it is at a hotel. I know that. It's at the Hilton, I believe. Let me double check this before I have this. You threw me here last minute. So yeah, it's the Hilton. No, you're good. It's the Hilton Orlando is where we're at. So if it's anything like personal life, my wife pretty much keeps the calendar and I show up.
Heck yeah.
So I sit there and try to look pretty is what I do. But yeah, it's at the Hilton Orlando.
Nice.
So I watch all these reels. My wife sends me reels, and like every reel is the husband that just was told where to be, what to do, who to do it with. And 30 seconds later is like, so what's going on tonight? What are we doing?
Yeah.
That is totally me. She's got Google calendars with everything listed in 15-minute increments. I don't even have Google Calendar on my phone. She was like, how do you survive? I'm like, because of you. Seriously, because of you.
Yeah.
All right, so that's awesome. Like, and I know Jimmy knows Empower, and we all know Will, and there are a lot of people that we know and respect go into that. Before we got on now, Joey was telling me about, some of the things that he sees in private practice, and without shaming anybody, everything that Joey was sharing with me is stuff that we've lived, stuff that we've been through. I've shared this story. Like when I originally came into Ohio, I was invited to join a spine center. They had a outside third-party consultant coming in. They had 2 spine surgeons, anesthesiology, massage therapy, chiropractic, psychology. They were investing millions, bought a building, did all this stuff. Everything completely collapsed within about a year and a half to 2 years. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, everything collapsed. And it all came down to there was one billing person. Joey, you'll get a kick out of this. One billing person that was the same billing person when it was just the spine surgeon. This one billing person now was responsible for all of these providers coming in. They did not build out any infrastructure for this new entity. They hired everyone, brought them all in. Nobody was submitting claims. They found boxes and boxes of claims, paper claims, that never got submitted, never got sent. The anesthesiologist never got credentialed with the new group, so none of those claims were getting paid. It was just a complete nightmare, but everybody was so excited about the growth and the center and all the stuff going on. Nobody looked under the hood to say, hey, there's no engine in this car. Like literally, remember the old Volkswagen Bugs? You would open the front hood and there was no engine because it was in the back.
Yep.
So give us a little context, like what are some of the things that, small and mid-sized practice owners are realizing when somebody looks under the hood and they're not making a profit and they don't know why?
Yeah, there can be a lot of different things. If we're going down the billing route here, a lot of times it's because when at one point we had enough billing in-house and then we added 3 therapists and we kind of forgot that you also need to add billing accordingly. Or it was someone who kind of had baseline foundations and there was some oversight by the owner more because they had time and bandwidth to do that. And then all of a sudden you get slammed and now there's all these other things. And now the oversight that caught a lot of those errors is no longer there anymore. And you have someone, and then 6 months later, you replace that person who didn't actually learn from all those mistakes before. And all of a sudden we have new people there. And so when we start to look at like all of this type stuff, really ratios are one of the things that are probably out of whack for a lot of people. So when I say ratios, typically like when we look at different ratios, there's like PT to PTA ratios, there's PT to tech ratios, and then there's front office to PT ratio, and then there's billers to claims ratios. And usually they're out of whack on pretty much every single one of these. And so like you'll see some, if you get to people that are doing like 30-minute kind of treatments, that's typically in like your New York, your Florida, like all your places with terrible reimbursement. They're typically almost a 1-to-1 ratio when you go to 30. So then their expenses end up being like $2,000 more per full-time provider because they have a tech with each one. And so when you actually start looking at that in the units, then they're effectively might as well just switch to different scheduling because they're just giving away all their money. And now they feel like a can of sardines there. Like that's the like tech to PT ratio. PT to PTA, I know you're breaking this one, Tony. I always give you a hard time on this, but like typically we want to maintain at least a 2-to-1 ratio of PT to PTA ratio. So that way we don't have to feel like a workhorse doing the evals for everybody. People can take breaks and stuff like that. That's
so wait. You're saying 2 PTs to 1 PTA?
Yeah, ideally we want to maintain. So essentially the first 3 of your hires should be a PT before we even touch a PTA. Because we want something that essentially looks and functions just like the owner if the goal is to give the owner freedom. And if we hire nothing but PTAs, like I have one right now, she had 3.5 PTAs and she's like, I haven't been able to take a vacation in years. Yeah. And her mom had gotten sick and she was having a hard time taking off work because she's the one that keeps everything kind of fueled there. Yeah. And so it's 3 PTs to eventually have a PTA. And then from there, once you hire that PTA, we want to try to maintain a 2-to-1 ratio if possible. The more rural you are, that becomes a little bit harder and stuff like that. So it is what it is. And then when you're looking at other ratios, like essentially front office staff, and this is not including billing, front office staff can manage about 110 visits a week as far as how many they can have before they do. So roughly 2 full-time providers is what they can kind of actually support. And so when you look at the billing side of things, they can handle about 240 to 300 claims a week, kind of depending on the complexity of your payers and stuff like that. And so what normally happens is, like, I was just talking to one that had, like, I won't say specific numbers so they don't know that I'm talking about them, but let's say they have like 9 FTEs. And so for them, they had 3 front office people, but one of them was effectively only focusing on billing and 2 of them were for the front office stuff. And so if you look at them, they were doing 45-minute scheduling. And so when you actually do the math of that, we'll say, okay, 9 times 50, which is about how many you can see if you're doing there. So 450 visits a week. And so if we're at 450 a week, then realistically, we need 4 front office people just for scheduling and all of the like stuff there. That doesn't include billing. And so if you're looking at 450 a week, that also means you need 2 full-time billers. And so typically what happens is you'll feel like you're saving money. Either you start to have AR issues, stuff doesn't get submitted, stuff doesn't get actually the right modifiers. Half the time the actual issue is like name, phone number, email address, like all the stuff that actually has to be part of a chart doesn't end up happening because they're busy and they're like, I'll get to that later. And so it's not even an actual true billing issue. It's like just a mistake because they're slammed. Or what ends up happening is they end up having drop-offs, no-shows, cancels. They don't follow up with the patient that's there and all those things. And so they either go way heavier into the billing and then the scheduling falls apart, or they focus way heavier on the scheduling and then the billing falls apart. And so usually it's one or the other. In some cases, it's both. And it's just like, oh my God, how do we fix this thing? But it's the ratios that are typically out of whack, which is why I'm not like the biggest proponent of in-house billing. Because what ends up happening is you hire, and you're like, this is awesome, super good margins. You're actually like overstaffed a little bit, but maybe a little bit heavy on the when you actually look at the salary compared to the revenue, the percentage, it may be perfect. But then you grow and now you're like, oh crap, now we're understaffed. So now you need to go hire again. Well, now you're over leveraged and you're actually like 8 to 10% of your revenue is actually in salaries of billers. So it's like, I could just pay a professional that does nothing but this all day. But just like realtors, just like CPAs, just like a lot of things, for every 1 good biller, there's probably 10 terrible ones.
Yeah.
And people are a little bit scared of it. So that's what I see like all the time. Like if I see billing in house, I'm like, we need to do an AR audit. They're like, well, our AR is good. I'm like, nope, we just need to do it. I just assume it's terrible until proven otherwise. That's pretty much what I see.
Jimmy, now this is stepping into your world a little bit. What are you thinking about when he says that?
Well, newly into my world, right? Like I didn't even know what RCM was 6 months ago, right? I had no idea and didn't care. And like, frankly, like sort of don't care, except what can it do if you get it right? Mm-hmm. Right. Like, so like, do I want the nuance in the spreadsheet? No. Like working for Thelis, like, I'm not like, I can't wait to talk to you about the 26 steps in the billing process. Like I can wait to talk to you about that. But like you said, if you find one person who knows how to do it well, like this is an automation, like this is something that a person can set up systems to run. So when I hear people have proportions out of whack, or they know something's wrong, but they're not changing it, this is an emotional issue. This is a psychological, like you know something's wrong, you feel overwhelmed, you've decided not to fix it, so you didn't, and then that's why the boat sinks. The boat sinks is not most of the time not because of the leak we don't know, but the leak we know that we say we're going to fix later. So like this is where I get excited for like bringing in things like automation, because should a person know the 26 steps of the billing cycle? Like they should know them, and they should know what machine is running them through, so those things get done and to get done efficiently. Because you're right, you shouldn't be paying 10% on getting paid. Like that is a lot of money. Like a dollar for every 10, a dime for every dollar to get paid. Like, oh, that's a kick in the bad place.
So let me ask you this: every time we have you on, we always end up talking about hiring, recruiting. Last time we were talking about clinicians. What are your thoughts on the idea that, you know, the business that Jimmy's working for a company, the company is 3 people, the 2 founders and Jimmy. Now the company is growing to 6 people, to 10 people, to 15 people. My experience, Jimmy is probably not still the best candidate for the 15-person company like he was with the 3-person company. Mm-hmm. When we talk about bringing on admin, bringing on, you know, internal people to support the clinical side of things, are you seeing clinicians do better bringing in new people to kind of take new leadership roles, or are they only bringing in people at the bottom and then bringing them up as the business grows? Any content for that?
Are we talking on the clinician side, or are we talking on the
Admin
front
side.
office side?
Admin side.
I think it really depends on the person. Because I have seen it, and usually when I ask this stuff, anytime I'm on a call with a potentially like a new client, I'll say, cool, do you have an office manager and do you have a clinical director? Usually they'll say, yeah, I do. And then they name one person. I'm like, okay, so we haven't delineated this role. So one, that's typically not how we want it. So we want someone who's on back, someone who's on the front. I'm like, cool. So what do they do? And they're like, well, like they manage the other front office person. I'm like, okay, cool. What does manage mean to you? And they're like, well, like they tell them what to do. And I'm like, are they doing hiring, training, performance reviews? Are they doing like some type of audits on their stuff? They're like, no, I do that. I'm like, awesome. So you don't have an office manager. I said, you've paid someone the title of that. And so sometimes we have to actually de-title someone in some of these scenarios. But I usually ask them, it's like, knowing this is what they should be doing, do you have anybody on your team that inherently could fit that role long-term in your eyes? And most of the time there's a really long pause. And then they say, well, that's usually how it starts. And then they'll say, I think so-and-so would be good. And then they start to give some type of actual characteristic traits that means they work hard, they try hard, they mean well, all of those softeners for the fact that they're actually not the right fit. And so those are typically the conversations that we have. And I find a lot of times in most cases, you can find that person internally and you train them. The issue is most people aren't good at training them. And so if you don't have someone like this is a shameless plug, like we have training for office manager, for patient care coordinator, like we can train that person if they are trainable. But if they don't have those things, most people would probably actually benefit from hiring the role versus actually trying to train it, because that would assume that the owner actually knows what's supposed to be being done with that role and has time to train them and hold them accountable to it. And most of the time they do not. And so if anything, I would say who already has a proven track record of doing this, and then let them do that. But that doesn't mean just because they have 10 years of experience that they know how to do it. That could be essentially 10 years of doing it wrong.
Right. And 1 year experience 10 times. I mean,
yeah.
Those are deadly because they come in with a puffed chest.
Yeah. And they a lot of times have bad habits and stuff like that you now have to break. And so the big thing you look at is you have to actually get some type of way to assess for the skills that they actually have to have there. And I think that's the biggest thing is most people don't. They just go based off of like, do they seem like a good culture fit, which is good. But if you're trying to pay someone to inherently come in, batteries included, effectively, then you want to make sure that they've done the job, they know how to do it, and they can just be pointed in the right direction, they're going to do it. I will also say when you go the actual kind of leadership and promoting within, I do find a lot of times they need a lot of coaching on essentially how to hold what used to be a peer accountable. Yeah. Because now all of a sudden they went from we're buddy to all of a sudden you're now holding me accountable. I don't like this dynamic.
Right.
And so I think it's probably 50-50 if I said like how it ends up working out typically within the clinics we're in. But it kind of depends on like who they already have in that role. But usually it's like so-and-so was with me since day one. So like they hold on to that person for forever. Yeah. But like it's very uncommon when someone, I think there's actually a stat on this. When a company doubles more than twice, I think only 70% of the staff actually are still there.
Yeah. Yeah. We were never able to really bring somebody through as the company grew. You know, our A players at 3-person company were definitely not happy. They weren't satisfied. They weren't fulfilled when we were a 10-person company and then a 20-person company. And even like right now, I mean, we're going through another transition. We're always transitioning. It seems like we had downsized. Nobody was at the front desk. We were trying to automate things. We were trying to treat all the patients, do all the billing, do everything. We're like, we cannot sustain this. My wife comes back into the practice. First time in 17 years, she's coming back into the practice. I think she was thinking, well, I'm going to come treat patients because you got more patients than you guys can handle. We don't need help treating patients. We need help like calling new patients back, scheduling patients, admitting patients into the EMR. Like, And then layer 2 is, okay, we need to build our systems again. We are in a completely different business today than we were even 2 years ago. You guys know this. We went from paper documentation to electronic. Well, that means we need new systems. We need new procedures. We need new policies. We need to figure out how to grease these wheels so that it's not 50 different clicks to admit a new patient, but we can make this more efficient. My wife, I mean, she's brilliant. She's a genius. Like, she can come in and she thrives on figuring out how to make a bad system better. It's hard to find that, like, how do you hire and how do you afford to pay somebody what they need to make them feel valued, but who has the creative side of saying, look, I'm coming into a train wreck and we're going to figure out how to turn this around, because it's not like you can just hire somebody at minimum wage to answer the phones. You really need that creative person who loves making things better, who loves fixing problems on the admin side. Have you guys found any kind of, way to attract that kind of person?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, I mean, it's just like on the clinical side, we have to essentially show them what the actual progression is for them within the company. So I think one of the biggest things, like we have one in Tennessee, they were having issues with, they've got 7 locations, I think 36 FTEs. And for them, they kept having issues with trying to actually maintain their front office staff. They just kept churning. And they're like, I don't know why. Because like in general, they keep everybody else. And so they're like, we have good culture. We've got all these 5-star reviews. Everybody seems to love working here, but we keep churning. And we're like, well, it's because you don't have an ascension plan. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, just like you do with your PTs, like they need to know where their career is. Otherwise, in a lot of cases, they see it's much easier to go switch somewhere else and just get a $3 lift. And so I did actually see a thing talking about a curve of how used to the actual best way to get more of a money was to switch jobs. That like went up really, really heavy. And then now it's actually coming back down. And so it's actually calibrated again to people realize that all the ways of making money was the best way to switch a job. And now they're like, oh, it's actually not. And it's calibrating back again. Right. And so I think over the next 3 to 5 years, you'll see a little bit more loyalty from people. But I think having an actual ascension plan of like, hey, this is where you're at. These are the roles and responsibilities. This is what 1 year looks like, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and actually doing that. But then the other thing is actually pouring into these people. I think the biggest thing is I think we've thought if we come in, we do these things, we're going to be seen as micromanaging. But like realistically, players, they don't see it as micromanaging. They see it as caring. And so it's like actually being held accountable. And so like for us, we have what's called Front Office Success Academy. So like we literally train all of our front office, our clients' front office to help with a lot of these things. And it was kind of shocking because originally you kind of think front office is like someone that doesn't really like care as much. They're there to check in, check out. But like there's a whole community. So like we do coaching calls, we do training. There's a community where they can ask their questions and all that. It's more active than the PT side on all this type stuff. And like they want to learn. They're asking questions. They're like happy to get on and do role playing to overcome someone not wanting to pay a deductible and like all of these different things. And it's very, very different than what I thought before we started kind of putting way more of our focus on staff training. And so I think if you truly pour in, they also realize if you do it right, it changes the kind of person they are personally. Like I've literally had people tell us, they're like, I feel like a different person, not just like inside of like our practice and stuff like that. It's like, I'm actually like knowing how to communicate, knowing how to kind of emphasize these things that are really going to make me a different person and have more confidence in these things. And I'm having better conversations with my husband, with my family, like all of those type things. And so I think realistically, you can grow all of these things and people will do that. But I think that's why it's also good to have feedback. Like, I think overwhelmingly owners do not get feedback because they're afraid of what they're going to hear. And so like the very first thing we do when we start with a clinic is we do a staff survey. And like, it's usually brutal on the front end because it's like they hear like, I don't know what the core values are. I don't know if I can trust the team. They're changing things all the time. I can't trust on so-and-so to do this. And like, it's usually like a kind of a punch to the face with some of our owners. But like the good owners are like, oh my God, now I know what I can actually fix. I didn't know that was a name.
Yeah.
Or they're like, who do you think would be good for leadership? And like everybody's saying like Susan. It's like, oh, I didn't even think about Susan because like Susan's a PTA. And I'm like, well, what does that matter? And so like there's so much of that like you can just instill these things in place, and then it's just feedback. It's you get feedback, you improve, and you do it again.
Yeah.
But a lot of times there's just not good process to get that feedback to continue training them over.
Jimmy, have you been involved in any? You guys do audits and stuff. Have you been involved in any yet?
Like financial audits? No.
Yeah.
Not yet, just because I'm new. But we did this in radio. Like, I mean, you want to talk about growth. You're different as a one-person runner in a marathon than you are as a two-person tennis doubles team, as you are as a five-person basketball team, as you are as a nine-person baseball team. Like, you could be a great athlete in all those different sports, but your role changes. And if it doesn't, you're playing first base on a soccer field. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I had a great sales manager who used to say, like, first understand the game we're playing. Because if I'm here playing hockey and you think we're playing figure skating, we both have skates on and I'm scoring goals but have no points. So it doesn't make any sense. So understand what game we're playing and then what position am I playing? Is it clear what position I'm playing? Because I thought the whole time my job was to do ABC. Meanwhile, you're over there and with your door closed in your office and you're mad at me because Jimmy's bad at his job. But meanwhile, I thought I was doing great. Like so this is like we boil all these things down to communication issues and emotions. And as dumb as that sounds, believe me, 25-year-old Jimmy would have been like, this all sounds new agey. I don't like it. This is a business problem. And I'm like, well, who you got in your business? People, and people have emotions and they bring them with them to work and they carry over. And it can be dangerous. I've worked for big companies that were small and went big. If you look at my resume, I think you can figure out which company I'm talking about. That got huge, and then the people at the top would say, "I want feedback. We want critical feedback," and you'd give it, and then they'd reject it. I mean, we worked for one company who brought in a six-figure organization to do essentially a DNA audit of their company. Like, we're good at this size, but we want to get to this size. This size. How do we get there? Because as you scale, it's not linear. And they took all this feedback and they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Because they didn't like it. These are smart people making emotional decisions and with emotional reactions. It's funny.
All right. Well, I already kept Joey longer than I told him.
Wait, one more. Scott's got a question. What's your staffing solution during busy season? Scott's in Florida. Volumes can be seasonal. Florida's a unique place. All the nuts roll downhill to Florida, right?
Yeah.
You guys are rolling down to Florida too. Seasonal, difficult to manage without temp staff, which is not ideal, but it's something he's got to deal with. What are your 2 cents on seasonal?
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of hiring just for seasonal. I'm a fan of trying to figure out why it's seasonal. So I know that sounds silly and you're like, people move, but like we've got probably
Hashtag Florida.
We've got 40 locations or so that are in Florida. So like you don't have to have a slow season. I think that's the actual myth is why are we still not full during those times? It's like, yes, there's less people, but like, is there still not enough people to stay full during that time?
Florida's a pretty populated state.
Yeah, it's going to be busy no matter what. So it's like, do we have proper SEO, Google ads, Facebook ads, past patient marketing, in-person networking? Do we have proper physician referrals? And so I typically am how do we solve for the fact of, will you see a drop in census? Yes. Should it be enough to where you're like, I've got to let people go because all of a sudden people are gone and all that? No, there's no world where that should be a thing. We should also be looking at what's called pre-booking. So like you should be scheduling out minimum 6 weeks of the people's actual plan of care. So that way you actually have a little bit more consistency, because it's not just Florida. It's like Arizona, it goes 108 degrees. They see like a 20% decrease in census because people are like, I'm going to melt if I go outside. And so New York has the exact inverse of Florida's snowbird season. And so the more you can do like this pre-booking, because you should know that at least 60% of your people are willing to book out 6 visits of their plan of care from the day of their eval. And if you do that, you now have a little bit more kind of guidance on how much you will have as we start to slow down. And then you start planning workshops, you start planning reactivations, you start doing more ads during the time that you know is going to be slow. So the first step is just like, look at all your visits, evals, all that type stuff historically over the last 3 years. You'll now know exactly where is the slow season start. And then 2 weeks ahead of that, start planting all of these marketing efforts. So that way you can stay full during this time. So that's kind of what I would start to look at. But it is always good to have, like, as you get bigger, you should probably have a PRN person just always ready in the wing, because you've got people who have kids, who get sick, who want to have holidays, all that type stuff. And for every week you have someone that's not taking up that spot, that's $5,000 a week in revenue that you're missing because you don't have someone to backfill it. And what typically happens is the owner's the one that backfills it. And then all of a sudden they can't focus on the business. So like, you should have someone that you have ready to kind of come in at any moment. So I think it's good to have it, but I don't think we should be dependent on it, even if we're in a state like Florida. But that was a good question.
Cool. I dropped the link to your event, and just for people doing the listening, it is called the P3 PT Millionaire Conference. Unlock the P3 formula. Get more providers, patients, and profits. I'm seeing the 3 Ps. And in lovely Orlando, Florida, April 24th to the 26th, it is at the Hilton. Make sure you show up to the right hotel, Joey.
All right, Joey. We always appreciate you coming on, man. You share so much great information. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Real quick. I don't know if you know, right in the beginning of the show, I spilled coffee on my keyboard and was trying to be real slick about mopping it up without, drawing attention away from that. I was like trying to have Joey talk, and I was like over here with like a paper towel. Like, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
We did not notice. Talking to Scott's question though, and building on what Joey said, when we were in Sarasota, we would see basically a doubling, almost a tripling of patient volume, let's say January, February, March, compared to September, October, November. September was just dead. August was dead. It was August, September, October. One of the strategies that we've always used, even today, we continue to use it. So we would have PTAs. When we got really slow in the off season, we would say, look, we'll pay you. We'll guarantee you the money. Even if you're just sitting here, we will pay you for your time because we want you to know that we value you. But if you want, you could go pick up a PRN shift at the skilled nursing down the street. You're going to make 30% more per hour. It's going to help us save a little bit. It's a win-win scenario. And almost always the clinicians, once it came into the slow season, especially the peak slow season, they would go pick up PRN work at skilled nursing facilities. They would do some home health assignments. They would make a bunch more money. We would be able to be a little more efficient. But we told them, we will never call you off. We will guarantee you, payment because you are a part of the team. And so that's always worked. I mean, even today, my PTA goes on Fridays and he picks up a shift at the skilled nursing just because he wants the extra money and he enjoys it, and he knows that he's helping them because they never have enough staff.
Right.
So there are strategies out there. We would also utilize, like in season, if we needed to, we'd reduce the duration of each visit. The patient would still be in the clinic for the full time, but we would be doing, fewer billable units to insurance. We'd open up other options that way. Which I wanted to run this by you, so there's a lot of conversation on LinkedIn around my single unit visit post and around my post about McDonald's. And for context, people watching, I said, I would be proud to say I created the McDonald's of physical therapy. If I could bring in their logistics brilliance, if I could bring in their systems, their automations, the ability to deliver, I think I looked it up, it was like 80 million meals a day to people who are voluntarily going to McDonald's. Whether you like McDonald's or not, doesn't matter. These are people that have a choice. They could go to other fast food chains. They could go to make a sandwich at home. They can do a million other things. They are choosing to spend their money at McDonald's. Yeah, there's a post on LinkedIn. It's just incredible what they've been able to do. And I guarantee if McDonald's went around to all the small restaurant owners and said, hey, we've got this idea to make this product, every restaurant owner would say it's a horrible idea. Yet it's an incredibly profitable business. Bring in the real estate, bring in all the other, monetization strategies. So what I was thinking about this morning on the way to work that I said I'm going to run by Jimmy, one of the biggest resistance points was therapists and practice owners who say, how do you get people to come 5 days a week? How do you get people to do more than once or twice or 3 times a week? I'm like, what do you mean? If you believe there's value in that kind of consistency, especially for an acute, hey, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever. If a doctor says you need to take this blood pressure medicine 7 days a week, there are people who don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's people who choose not to. Don't take the diabetes medicine. Don't take whatever. But this is my prescription. You and I, patient and therapist, sat down. We did an evaluation. We assessed the results, and we said, if you want to reach this goal, this is my prescription. If the patient says, I don't want to do it, I have a choice. I can say, okay, go across the street, go down the road, go to somebody else who is willing to let you do what you want to do, because what you want to do is not going to get you the goal that you want. Or the therapist can say, okay, I will concede. Let's do it 2 days a week. Let's, whatever. I mean, there's room for variability. But what do you think about the therapist prescribing the dosage and the patient saying, I'm not going to do it? Should the therapist ditch that patient? Should they find only patients that are willing to do what has been prescribed?
I mean, we talk about firing clients all the time, right? Because if and eventually if Dana's watching, if we're going to value-based care, you should say, this is a bad bet, right? I'm going to take value-based care again as here's $2,000 for a knee replacement, get them better, and whatever money you have left over, if you can get them better in $1,500, you keep $500 and everyone's happy, right? I think, there's a lot to unpack here, though, Tony. You asked me a lot of questions there. So, like, the thing is, the reason I've got the golden arches on the screen is people look at McDonald's and they might say, and I'm not going to use any brands in physical therapy or healthcare because I don't want to compare them, because people will compare. Now, I will use a brand because I like the people there. They'll look at ATI, Athletico, Pivot, Therapeutic Associates. They are big. So they are McDonald's. So they are trashy. No, like, you just made so many logical leaps. Yes, McDonald's has a large footprint. So do a lot of the organizations, the brands, the physicals of the world. But that doesn't necessarily immediately leap to low quality. McDonald's, if you watch the origin story, right? That's what was it called? What was the actual name of that movie? Croc? Croc was the name of the dude, but you know what I'm talking about. The origin story with Michael Keaton. And it was when the dude from The Office came in, BJ Novak, and said, I don't think you understand what business you're in, which we alluded to earlier in the show with Joey. Understand what business you're in. He said, you're not gonna make $1 million. The founder. Right. Because he essentially stole it from the McDonald brothers, right? So he said, you're not going to be a millionaire getting a nickel off of every 25-cent or 50-cent hamburger, whatever the ratio was. He said, you own the land. So he understood they're in the footprint business. And again, if you don't like, I mean, Tony, of course, like, there's warning labels on, packages of cigarettes, and we know what high fructose corn syrup can do. But people like what they get. They understand. I mean, McDonald's, if they're nothing than anything else, they are consistent. Like, you know what you're going to get. Like, I heard a great marketing professor of mine say, McDonald's could sell you sushi, right? But they don't, because you have to understand. When you walk in, they want you to understand consistency. Was it you talking about Usain Bolt, or did I make that up? Oh, well, then I watched a video. Usain Bolt would eat nothing but chicken nuggets leading up to the Olympics. That's insane. Of course, he wouldn't do that. He said, I have 2 dangers as I lead up to the Olympics. I knew I was going to win that race. I knew I was the fastest man on the planet by meters. I crushed people, right? He said 2 problems. I needed to make sure I got enough protein, and I could not get sick. So even if he was like, I'm making this at home, I'm going to secure the environment. My mom is going to cook for me because I trust her. There's still an element of inconsistency, right? It's at home. It's a residential kitchen. He would eat McDonald's because he knew one thing above all else: consistency. So, all right, let's get that out of the way. That's what McDonald's offers. So that's number 1 in the question you asked.
So the video was Rory Sutherland talking about the difference between 5-star Michelin restaurant and McDonald's. He said he's gone to amazing restaurants with amazing chefs, and he's gotten sick before. eating their creations versus he's never gotten sick eating McDonald's. And that's the Usain Bolt story, that if you know you need something that's not going to make you have to run to the toilet, you're going to eat something that is consistently reliable.
Right. So
and then when we go to therapy, I mean, how many patients today, right this minute, almost 9-10, are walking into physical therapy clinics all across the country? They don't know who they're going to see. They don't know what they're going to do.
Yes.
They don't know what it's going to cost. They don't know how long the session's going to be. There is a complete disconnect between what we want to deliver. There's a patient that could walk into a clinic today and get a 40-minute manual treatment. There's a patient that could walk into my clinic and get a 40-minute exercise treatment. Like everything is so different. If we brought that consistency, even if it wasn't the best, patients are going to respond positively in many cases. Not every patient, but a lot of them will.
So this is where we go deeper into your LinkedIn post, or I should say the comments, which this thing sort of started to blow up. The McDonald's at PT already exists, and then this person, lists a bunch of those things, like a bunch of those brands that I mentioned. And then someone, Cordell Pickering, who I know, said, I prefer Chick-fil-A. But why do you prefer Chick-fil-A, Cordell? Like it's in the experience, right? Like they deliver service. Here's the problem. And I see Jerry's commenting live too. What I think happens is you say, I wanted to be one-on-one, 90-minute sessions, beautiful environment. You never, ever ask the person who is hopefully going to consume that if that's what they wanted. You never did that. I used to work in a rehab innovation lab at Mount Sinai Hospital with David Petrino. This dude's very smart because he could break everything down super small. And he would talk about tech bros who would come in and pitch technology to him to help people with disabilities. And his first question would be, show me 10 people with that disability that you asked if the problem that you're solving is a problem that they have. Judy Heumann, who is a famous disabilities activist. You ever see the picture of the people, they jumped out of their wheelchairs and they were crawling up the steps in Washington, D.C. to essentially push forward the ADA? One of those was Judy Heumann. She said 99 times out of 100, there's no one in the room with a disability who looks like me, meaning Judy, in the room for the conversation. So I think the problem is you think you know what good is, but you haven't asked the people who you want to come and pay you money to deliver the thing. Like Jerry will tell you all the time, he did the dumbest thing ever, sat in his own waiting room and listened, right? And he would listen to the dumb conversations that would happen, and then he changed them. And so understanding what good is subjective, and it's not what you think it is, it's what they think it is. So McDonald's delivers, their system is set up to deliver exactly what it delivers. It is exactly what you expect and get out. Now, if you want a medium rare filet mignon, you never, ever think about McDonald's. So ask what game you're in.
Yeah, I can remember going back a million years ago, PT school, listening to professors. They would literally say, like, there were geriatrics who like consistency. They want to come in. They want the machine to be in the same place. They want to do the same thing. They want to know there's a level of comfort that feels good when you're doing the same thing. But as a therapist, as a practice owner, I love moving equipment around. I used to move equipment around every 2 or 3 months. And then I learned a lesson. Every time I moved equipment around, patients are like, oh, you keep moving stuff on me. Like they would literally get upset, even though the flow was better, because I moved something, And so as therapists, we're like, well, patients don't want to do the same thing every day. Well, some do. Some do want to do the same thing every day. If you go to Planet Fitness, you go to the YMCA, you watch people, you sit there. A lot of them are going and they're doing the same thing every day. And maybe they're not looking different, but they feel good in what they're doing, So like there's our biases, but there's also what the consumer wants. And this is always my frustration in healthcare in general. I still think most healthcare providers are, I am the professional, I am the expert, I am going to tell you what to do, and it's my way or the highway. And then you've got a subset that's like, hey, let's do this together. I know what I want you to do. I know what I want you to want to do, but that might not be what's going to happen, and talking about kind of consistency, McDonald's versus Burger King. I remember as a kid growing up, Burger King was have it your way, because McDonald's, other than saying hold the onions,
Oh yeah.
like McDonald's was going to give you the McDonald's burger. You got mustard and ketchup whether you wanted it or not. They were not customizing. They were not changing. This is the experience that you were getting. Fast forward 20, 30, 40 years, McDonald's is on top. Burger King is, a fraction of what it used to be, and no competition to McDonald's. Meanwhile, Burger King tried to have it your way, tried to customize everything, and you just can't do that at scale successfully.
All right. So
and this is where we go back to, okay, so the people watching, a lot of you guys are small operators. I'm a small operator. I can provide a unique custom experience to every single human that walks in the door. I can do that. But if I've got 100 clinics with 1,000 therapists, and I'm trying to deliver a consistent product at a value at scale, that's not the model that's going to work.
Right. And the problem is humans. You've got several humans in the equation, right? Like McDonald's understands that the human, the customer, is at the beginning and the end. I put the order in, the system happens, it pops out, and there's the customer. The people in the process, right? The people behind the counter who take the orders, who cook the food, they are running a process. There's as few McDonald's is in the reduction of variables business. They're like, how do we make this as idiot proof as possible? If you've been in a McDonald's kitchen, and I've snuck back there, maybe because a friend worked there, maybe I just wanted some nugs at 2:00 in the morning. It is literally like laminated exactly how to make a Big Mac. And like, there is the laminated, looks like the person from IKEA designed it. Reduce variables. Now, if you start comparing, we're going to create the McDonald's of PT, you got too many variables, man. I mean, low back pain is not low back pain for this guy, for this girl. It's just not. So there's the variable. And this clinician is not that clinician. Variable times variable equals variable squared.
All right, I think I'm going to disagree with you. If I understand what you're saying, are you suggesting that there are too many variables to make the McDonald's of PT?
No. I'm saying right now we have that. Like right now, it's just do whatever you want. Right now, it's have it your way. You're a clinician, do whatever you want. It's like, well, I need you to deliver this, right? So it could have a little variability in it. But the thing is, if you're just saying, I do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, it's too variable. It's too much. Because your original question was, and you fell for the McKay trap, which was let me go on a tangent. And you followed me on the tangent. Not a good idea, Tony. So the original question before we went to McDonald's was something like saying to the person, we're going to make a plan and we're going to come in 5 days a week. Do you think that's possible? I think it is, but you have to frame it differently. Like, so while you were asking that question, my first thought was, what NFL draft picks go through before the combine? And I had I think it was Jamie, who came on and talked to me. He's like, I trained people who were top college draft picks to do the combine. And we had an agreement, and it was like, you knew the tests.
Right.
Bench press for reps and the 40 and the blah, 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 blah. He's like, outside the Wonderlic, the psychological test, he's like, we were working on everything physical, and we had an agreement. And if that draft pick it wasn't like, yes, I am going to lock in, and I believed them, we didn't take them on because we didn't want to mess up our average. We didn't want to mess up our ratio because that would prevent us from getting clients in the future. So I think you'd need to reframe what physical therapy is, which is a culture change. Because right now it's show up and I don't know, Tony does some of this and I do a little bit of this and then I'm better, right? And it's like clear a dry erase board. It's actually this. This is people like us, as Seth Godin would say, people like us do things like this. And if this isn't you, that's okay. I can give you referrals down the street. That's hard to say when you're running a business and you're starting, sending money away. But sometimes you got to fire the wrong client.
Yeah, and we've talked about that. It's right now we as in the royal we, the profession, we take everything. If somebody's referred for some condition, but that's not really true. Like there are plenty of private practices today who won't take a pediatric referral with a neuro condition. Right. Because they're outpatient orthopedic. There are plenty of practices who won't take a post-op amputee because they're not the facility for that. for us, we turn tons of that stuff away. I won't do vertigo, BPPV. I won't do any kind of post-stroke. I just had a referral the other day. My wife was sitting next to me. Mind you, she's still in, like, she said, it's like I came out of a time warp. It's like I've been in a coma for 17 years.
17 years.
Everything is completely different. She hears me on the phone. A caregiver for a patient says, you know, I need therapy for this patient. He just got approved for Medicaid, which we accept Medicaid. She's like, he had a stroke. I'm like, we are not the place to handle that patient. I said, I can do it if I'm forced to do it. I am a licensed physical therapist, but if you really want this person to get reasonable care, you have to go to a place that has neuro-based therapists. Do not come to me. And I have no problem with that. Why does it arbitrarily end at these distinctions, neuro, pediatric, whatever, but it doesn't arbitrarily end at, okay, I believe you need to be in here 5 days in a row. I don't believe you need 60 minutes, which was arbitrarily chosen. You know, why not 90? Why not 20? Why not whatever? So I think we're so stuck in this model that's been around forever that isn't viable the way it used to be. And even when I put these ideas out, you know, somebody was like, well, is this theoretical or practical? I'm like, I don't know, whatever you want it to be. I'm doing this not at scale,
Right.
but I'm also not interested at growing at scale. But we have people that come in 5 days in a row. They love it. They come in, they want to do it. This is part of their family. They're not on, you know, covered physical therapy. They were self-paying for this. When I was going to CrossFit, I was going 5 days in a row. Like, it's just what you do. So I think it establishes a level of priority to say, hey, if you really want this to work, this is what needs to happen. You know, and if this isn't what you want to sign up for, no problem, no guilt, no judgment, like, go do something else. But this is what we do here. And this is the expectation of success here.
It's consistently to create culture.
Yeah.
You have to set that. And ironically, I think if Joey were still here, he'd say that starts from within.
Yeah.
Because you can't have too many people saying, you can't, to go back to the McDonald's analogy, because I love analogies. We have a grill. I could run out across the street and buy you a filet mignon. I could do that. You could get it. Someone at the McDonald's kitchen could probably cook a great filet mignon, but it would gum up the works so bad that the juice wouldn't be worth the squeeze. And then someone was saying, but you could make more on a filet mignon. But you're going to make fewer filet mignons. And I don't want to make filet mignons. I don't. I want to make burgers, right? There was that great movie, I forget what it was, with Bradley Cooper, where he was the chef. And he's like, people poo-poo the poor person's food. But he's like, I see a great use of fat and protein and seasoning to make really great food for the masses. Like, I think people are looking at it differently. I think if you really wanted to boil the reactions in your comments to the McDonald's of physical therapy as ego. It's ego. It's emotion. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I would never work at a McDonald's of. And meanwhile, Tony's saying if I could create it, I would.
What I'm super excited about, I talked to two PTs that were working in home health. They left the home health model. They couldn't stand it anymore. They opened their own facility. It's a fitness-based facility first. So they charge a monthly membership. They have small group classes, big group classes. I think they do personal training one-on-one. I think their prices are more than reasonable, borderline too low, but they've got a successful model. They're doing well. They got connected with me because they wanted to learn about, well, how can we roll, maybe increase access and bring some Medicare covered services into what we're doing. But they were very clear, like, this is not a change in focus for the business. The business focus is adult geriatrics who want to be strong, who want to be fit, who want to perform well at life. And I was like, cool, let's talk about it. You know, we busted a bunch of myths, a bunch of ideas that they had in their head from what home health used to be to what outpatient Medicare Part B actually is. But it got me thinking again, and I shared a post and a poll. I'm like, I bet there are so many, you know, PTs, OTs that are out there that have gotten fed up with the traditional conventional system, move to all cash based fitness, wellness, things like that. But now maybe they're thinking about bringing back a little bit of that Medicare covered sweetness, and with it, I'm like, they're coming at this from a very different perspective in a positive way, because they've already built a successful business that wasn't dependent on third-party reimbursement. But now they're going to bring a little bit of that in to increase access. It's an interesting model. We're going to spend some time working through this. And of course, these were the first people that I said, hey, you could do single one-on-one units in a group. If you have a 30-minute class, you could do 3 10-minute one-on-ones within that group. Reimbursement rates at $30 per unit plus the cost of the participation in the class. You're blowing up revenue and profitability with really very little change to the experience you're delivering. And it made sense to them. It resonates with them because they're already in that world. These are already people that are actively coming because they want to come, not because the doctor told them they have to come. I just think there's so many underserved populations that we're not even getting the word out to because they don't want what conventional therapy has always been.
Use that as to your advantage. I mean, twice a week for 6 weeks, I don't know what percentage, more than 50% of the clinics in your geographic area is going to do that. When they zig, and they've been zigging for it's not even a zig. It's a zig would be a left or a right. This is a down the middle. Do the opposite. I know it's hard. That's why. But if you do it, there's a chance for success, right? Or do exactly what everybody else is doing. Listeners do want to know, when will Tony's wife get on the show? Do you think sometime in 2025 she'll drop by? I think she should be a featured guest.
It would be amazing. She would be so great to do something like that. I know we're hitting the end of the show. My parting shot, and I just want to I'm going to be sharing more posts. Jimmy is going to give me an Athelus Scribe demo as soon as I can carve out a little bit of time on my schedule. I'm really looking forward to it. But this morning when we came in, Jeremy, my PTA, and I, every time I'm seeing Jeremy, we're kind of revising and reworking our AI Scribe utilization. So the thing that I developed last night that we came in and tested this morning was this kind of hybrid model. And so for context, real quick, whatever the AI Scribe you guys are going to use, you pre-populate the scribe with the evaluation, the plan of care. This is my mental energy that goes into my evaluation, my assessment, my plan of care. The scribe just kind of puts it into a beautiful wrapper. Then what happens is, it's a combination, the scribe and I working together. So right now, for whatever reason, several orthopedic surgeons sent us over new protocols. These are post-surgical cases. So I go, cool, I'm going to throw this into the scribe. I put the surgeon's protocol into the scribe. And what we're playing with is the patient walks in the door. We generate the subjective report and we make the plan for the treatment session. I throw it into my scribe and I ask my scribe to review what sessions have already been done, what the plan of care is, what the treatment goal is based on the plan of care. And sequentially, each treatment visit's associated with a functional deficit that was identified in the evaluation. The scribe takes the information in the context I'm delivering, turns it into a format with additional recommendations. So I know I want to do this, this, and this. But then the scribe gives me recommendations on this, this, and that to increase and improve it. Plus, it provides a clinical rationale for why does this need the skills of a physical therapist? Don't repeat interventions that were done previously for this patient in this plan of care. Follow the uploaded guidelines for this particular third-party payer. And it's got all the training data in it. So it's a back and forth. This is what I'm getting. This is information for you. Process this information. Okay, I like these things, but I actually didn't do that. I did this instead. Here's the final result. And I just think it blows the doors off of a therapist doing it without technology or technology doing it without the therapist. Yes. This is the marriage that I've been looking for more than a year now.
Yeah, these are the droids you're looking for. these AI scribes. There's our next commercial for Othellis. We'll get someone to play Sir Alec McGinnis. A therapist could do all the things that you just listed. They just couldn't do it that fast. They could. We're not doubting intelligence of these great therapists. Somebody had a post, I don't know if it was on one of yours or one of mine, that said, I just responded to a physician's or a surgeon's referral with an in-depth, like a phone call or email or whatever. Why isn't everybody doing this? And I wrote a one-word response: time.
Yeah.
Well, that you make time. No. 24/7, 168, 52, 365. You don't make time. And when you're in a system that doesn't allow that, let's be realistic. I know you can be really magnanimous on a keyboard, right? Well, this is important and you do that. Great. What do I remove? 5 minutes of patient care? Okay. Well, no, you keep the patient care. Well, no, my man, 55 plus 5 equals 60. That's what I'm given because the next patient, well, do I take away patient care from the next person? Well, of course not. Then those two things aren't now. What I wanted that person to do was engage and not be a douchebag, but they chose douchebag, right? I'm fine with it because we do this in public. You could use an app to solve that, and you could get both because you could do both of those things. So it should be yes and, right? My parting shot would be check your emotions at the door. I'm guilty of this. I can do everything until you stop. Right. I can do everything. I can do my own taxes and do this and that and this and that. But will I? Right. I can run a marathon. Will I? Right. It used to burn me a little bit when I would finish an Ironman and people would be like, what are those proportions again? I'm like, it's 2.4 mile swim, 112 on a bike, 26.2 run. You do it all in order. And people would notoriously, well, I could do the bike part. And I would come back. But will you? No, you won't. Well, I could do the bike. Why? Well, I've ridden a bike before. Have you ridden a bike 112 miles an hour as fast as you can, as fast as you relatively can? Well, no. So that used to the downgrade things. So I know you can, but will you? And if the answer is no, refer out, pay higher, do something, get rid of it because it still needs to get done. Don't let your ego get in the way of success. We're coming back on Thursday and we'll do the demo. Do you want to do it live or do you want to do it recorded?
We'll figure it out. We'll talk about it in the meantime.
You tell me when you're busy. Tell your wife to pick her topic when she comes on the show, and we'll be back on Thursday. Check out Tony's YouTube. Check out my podcast wherever podcasts are sold or given away for free.